Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed visiting our expo booths. Moving to our next panel discussion of the day on the topic Understanding CapEx and OpEx, Decoding the Cloud Economics. To moderate this panel, I would like to welcome Manoj Sarangi, Chief Information Security Officer, NSDL Bank. Along with him, we have with us our esteemed speakers Anand Agrawal, Chief Information Officer, Aker India, Amit Goel, Head IT Risk Compliance, RBL Bank, Rishikant Dubey, Chief Risk Officer, Mutooth Microfin Limited, Dr. N. Ravindran, Chief Information Officer, Shakti Finance. Now, I would like to hand over this session to Mr. Manoj Sarangi to take it further. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shivani, for the introduction, and welcome all co-panelists for this interesting session on CapEx, OpEx, and implications on the cloud. In the recent
Manoj,
times,
I just want to say a comment for a second, Manoj. Sorry. I mean, it is not Acer India, it is Aker India. Yeah, Manoj. Sorry. Go ahead.
okay, sure. So thank you for the clarification. And regarding the cloud adoption and the capex apex dimension in the cloud, the few key drivers for adoption of OpEx model is cost, speed to scale, change in technology and adoption to the change in technology, uh, agility to launch new services and products, then inherent resiliency of the cloud, and most importantly, control the cash outflow. And for capital expenditures, which has been the kind of trademark of many enterprises since very long, and there is a physical sense of control of the environment, conservative outlook, then regulatory requirements. Some of the regulators want the organizations to maintain in-house setup and infrastructure, and there is a feeling that capital expenditure reduces cost over time. So once you spend, and then the expenditure tapers down. And in India, we are known to sweat the assets beyond its usable lifetime. So that works for many enterprises. And also, more importantly, predictable expenditure over time. That means, so if you are doing a OpEx model, the cloud services, using the cloud services, then the expenditure may go up or down depending on many markets in situations. So these are some of the drivers for and against capex and opex. And with that, let me put my first question to Mr. Anand. On the cloud adoption. So, looking at the current cloud adoption, what do you think are the major challenges and opportunities that are associated with cloud migration? So, if you have to migrate to cloud, what are the challenges, and what you think are the major opportunities?
Mr. Anand,
You
you are on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I think thanks, Manoj, the great question. I think this is a question which everybody has been talking about, and it is there in everybody's mind also. First thing, I think this pandemic has changed the way we look at the technology and the way we operate. We all are aware of it. And so cloud has come as a lifesaver for the businesses. So I would first talk about the opportunities that exist in the cloud. So I think first the basic thing is the cost economies. Now, I mean, in a public cloud scenario, you have multiple options. You have pay as you go. You have a long-term commitments. So if you when you talk about long-term commitment, you can actually reduce your cost by 60 to 70% as compared to pay on-demand instances. Now, other very interesting way that we I used to do is that if your instance does not require you to run it 24 by 7, now which means if you can shut it down in the night for let's say 8 to 9 hours, then also it is a mechanism through which you save huge amount of money while you are still an on demand, you are still using pay as you go, but by shutting down during the non peak in the night hours, you can still save huge amount of money. So So I think that is the first big in terms of opportunity that we have, as compared to spending the capex, which get depreciated and you have no choices. Other related to that comes of the scalability. I think so that is one. So you can just on the fly add based on your workload, based on your particular business scenario, based on the particular business season, based on. So let's say you are want to run. So you are an NBFC or some financial company. You want to run a scheme during the festival. Say that, I mean, I will waive processing fees, or I will give some special interest reduction for that 2 days, or for that Navratras festival. We lot of companies run, so most of manufacturing this thing, consumer durables. So now you cannot be buying an infrastructure for that peak of 2 weeks. Now this is where actually the cloud comes as a big savior, because you can actually upgrade on a real time basis. I mean, you can define that this is a threshold. If my load goes beyond this threshold, please add another workload to it. So it gets added dynamically, and when the workload reduces, it get reduced, it get downgraded also dynamically. So with this, you are able to enhance the customer experience and expectation, which is not available in a traditional scenario. I mean, you have to plug, and then that money, or whether it is capex or whatever other mechanism, that goes waste. I think that is the one of the these are the some of the clear cut opportunities, and other is the ease of access. I mean, in a work from home, we are just working from anywhere. I mean, I can just access cloud applications sitting from across the world. I don't need to. So I think that is another thing which is very. Now coming back on some of the challenges, I think even today, most of the traditional application what we are happening doing, we are doing lift and shift, lift from this on premises and migrate to the cloud. But not every architecture is aligned to be in a way that can be work in a lift and shift mechanism. That's the first thing. Now, another thing could be that, especially in the BFSI industries, while some of the large public cloud operators already have a data centers in India, so there are regulatory requirements that your data should remain within the boundaries. Now there are multiple cloud operators which are come up, which are small one, but they do not have data centers in India. So that is another thing. Now the another very important thing is the security considerations. Now, when you move to the cloud operator is only responsible for its own infrastructure, but the servers, that VMs, that application that he hosts, it is the responsibility of the organization or the client to safeguard those resources. And we all know that, I mean, in the kind of attacks we have been seeing. So I think that is one of the biggest challenge in terms of it. And when it comes to a mid-size or small organization, this challenge becomes compounded, because you are also struggling on the cost side, because the security also. So you have to find balance between the security consideration and the money and the business requirement. Another most important thing is the from the challenge perspective is the availability of the right skill set who can run the cloud workload, who can migrate on the cloud workloads. I think that is also one of the biggest challenge, and especially for the mid and small size organization, because they cannot go overboard in terms of the resources. The resources are limited. I think these are some of the challenges and
Right.
opportunities I view.
I think that that's quite well summarized. The opportunities like rapidly changing, capacity, dynamically managing capacity. Then the challenges spoke about the data localization requirement, and then the security is another major one. So let me dwell little more into that and pose this question to Amit.
Yeah. Hi,
Okay,
Manoj. Thanks and Anand has already covered most of the things. But to start with, let's talk about the journey, right? From where we started in 1900, in the 20th century, which was our own data centers, and which was like when the computers came in India or abroad, basically, we were just having our own data centers for our own businesses. Then with the dot market boom, we moved to IDCs, which is the internet data centers, because we required higher bandwidth, we required scalability, we require availability. So we moved to IDCs, and now we are talking about cloud. Uh, from being from a banking fraternity, always the point was that whether the data center that we are hosting, our services, right, the infrastructure, whether it is actually a data center, we used to term it as private cloud, right? Because it was treated like a private cloud, because it was infrastructure that was being hosted in somewhere, someone else's premises, which used to host other local other organizations infrastructure, which can be a bank or a NBFC or even a hospital or anybody basically. Uh, so why did we move to, or why we are looking at cloud now? It's more from the scalability perspective, availability perspective, because cloud gives us something which is called a horizontal scalability, right? We were already talking about vertical scalability in the IDCs, but the vertical scalability, which is at node level, adding more nodes, is something which is a critical aspect of it. So what about the challenges? Let's talk about challenges first, right? Anand covered most of the challenges, which is starting from, say, a simple thing like whether my uh, hardware, right, which will become obsolete in time to come. What will happen to that? But nobody thinks about from a hardware getting obsolete, or Windows, which is like a 2012 also is now going will run out of support. So what happens to those licenses? What happens to our database licenses? Similarly, right? Then there is a learning process of support resources already covered by Anand. Uh, Other important aspect is the security aspect, which was briefly touched upon, because it's a shared environment. Whether the environment that we are hosting is, because it's shared, can we deploy our own policies, which are the bank driven policies or organization driven policies, uh, and also the information and cybersecurity risk basically. So these are some challenges that normally comes on top of the mind. And also the last thing that I would want to cover in the challenge would be my core application. Being a bank, for us, our CBS is the core application. Whether the stability which is there in the current environment, the private cloud environment, whether it will be same when we move to cloud. So those are some challenges that I see were something which we there. But keeping aside these challenges, we see there are lots of opportunities over here. When I say opportunities, it is as simple as most of the players in India, when we talk about the data localization regulation of RBI, most of the cloud service providers, whether it is Azure or AWS or Google, they are all having their data centers in India. And so we are using their services. We can adopt new technology. So when a new technology or hardware technology comes in, we can surely get migrate to that new technology, which can help us out in growing our throughput as much as we want. Uh, the cloud comes with a lot of PaaS services, right? They have WAF available, they have databases available, so we reduce the cost of having those licenses cost, or having a separate set of separate set of procurement processes. Other aspect which is very important in banking, and which RBI is now pushing every bank to go for a 24 by 7 running a 24 hours DR drill, which is on a weekday and not on a weekend, just to be ready for any disaster. So cloud comes with that kind of flexibility of having a DR on the go. Uh, and then, as rightly stated by Anand, they have the various models like a pay-as-you-go model or a reserved instance model. Which reserved instance model, as yes, rightly put by Anand, it saves us the cost of just 60 to 70%. Also, we can manage our OpEx very well, right? Because CapEx and OpEx, what I feel, is more on a cash flow type, right? It's more of a accounting entries, but in the end state, from a technology perspective, it is more on the cash flow side. And if you are able to manage it, I don't see upliftment on the expenditure of more than 1.2 to 1.3x. So those are the opportunities that we have, and which helps us out actually in moving our, at least our non-core applications on cloud, and not just wait for everything going over cloud and then moving to it, or looking at that everything lift and shift into cloud, onto the cloud platform. We can look at moving our non-core applications, and then maybe as the time comes in, or when we look at migrating our core application, then move them also to the cloud. So as a bank, we have already adopted a hybrid cloud option, basically, wherein we have certain applications, the core applications on our private cloud, which is our own data center hosted in one of the IDCs, and the other applications are non-core on AWS cloud and Azure cloud. So that's what it is. So I would like to end it over here.
Okay, thank you. I think the unique points that you have brought in, inherent resiliency, the DR side being available, and data localization, which is already there, and then applications and licenses or different solutions available on the go. So these are some of the unique points that you have brought in. So switching gears, during this pandemic, everything is now, every organization adopting cloud some other way, starting from desktop as a service, starting from applications and the service, and then infrastructure as a service. So everything is being adopted, and it seems that the cloud adoption has grown during the pandemic, and people are adopting multi-cloud as well. Okay, and my next question is to Rishikant. Do you actually see a growth in the cloud adoption post the pandemic? And what are your thoughts on the multi-cloud adoption amongst financial industry?
Yeah, thank you, Manu. Very good question in the current context, if we are talking. And it's why it is pandemic only. Because if we are seeing that where the industry is going, so we can think over it by 2020, if we see the way the technology is changing, the way the requirement of the customers are coming up, and the way the financial industry is growing, BFSI is growing, and then it's not the thing that because of the pandemic adoption is more because of the requirement. We started this particular cloud adoption very early, last 3-4 years back itself. So most of the companies are switching to the cloud, seeing it's basically what are the real opportunities in the cloud. Because the cloud, whatever Amit has added and Anand has added, something I want to add on opportunity, because that only give the more effect on users of the cloud. One is that cost saving and all, but most important is like that we can host all my applications with integrate with the cloud, where I can do lot of AI and machine learning, where I can do a lot of analysis, and lot of innovation on the product side also is there with the cloud. Because that is going to be the next generation, where the product requirement, where the requirement from the really from the industry is going to be very different. So cloud is having a very good future. In pandemic, yes, because of the, since everybody has been switched to the work from home, and most of the use of the technology has started, not only BFSI, it has started where we have never imagined, like schools and all online schools have started, and lot of stuffs where we never thought that there will be online stuff, online things are going to come. So really cloud has increased its importance in pandemic. But yes, regarding, if we talk about the what type of infrastructure we are going to use, mix of CapEx and OpEx, or private cloud, public cloud, or hybrid. So in this sense, if we are talking, yes, both the models are having their own advantage. But yes, many of the BFSI industry where really investment is one of the challenge. OpEx model, most of the people are going, and it's quite relatively available, more available in the market. But yes, when we are adopting to the cloud, we need to be very ready with the whatever the challenges are going to come, which has been covered also. One of the things I am seeing is the network in the country. Means in the sense, if we are switching to the cloud, we need to have a very strong network, because when we want to utilize this cloud in a very effective manner. Second thing is that optimization of the cloud computing, when we are really optimizing the users, because if you are not optimizing this particular cloud users, then very huge chances that you are end up in incurring a huge cost. That is one of the major challenges is coming from these two things. And when we are really, Amit was telling that yes, it's an accounting type of entry, like whether it is CapEx or OpEx, but it matters in the long run, because when we are really going on an operating OpEx model, then there is a cost which is really coming in a current year, and we are end up with a own P&L in the same year itself. When we are going for the capex, then it's really another impact that is impacting my P&L as well as balance sheet. So we have to see what Anand has also summarized, that it depends on the size of the organization, type of organization, and type of usage. So the model which we are going to adopt is on the basis of what type of model we are, what type of my capital structure is there, and whether my capacity to invest in capital is there or not to adopt this model. If that is there, because we have to manage our current profit also, and that case we have to go for OpEx model. And when we are really having a very good capital, very good investment, then CapEx model can be a fruitful in this particular area. Yeah, Manoj. Manoj, you are in mute.
Sorry, I think that's a very good summary and a few points. Let me just develop on a few points that you have brought in. One is, some of the application capabilities like AI, ML, which you will not be able to kind of spend as a capital expense, which you can experiment on the cloud and adopt the best ones that are available. The other thing that you dwelled upon well is, the network. So one thing is, cloud is always not available on your premises, so you'll need to have strong network and to make sure that the cloud adoption is adequate. Let me move over to Anand. Just 2 minutes, Anand, your take on the multi-cloud adoption amongst finance industry players.
So I think so. Let us take a step back. I mean, how did multi-cloud? I mean, while we are talking multi-cloud now, and Gartner says that by 2024, two-thirds of the organization would be working on a multi-cloud strategy. Okay, but when you actually look at a step back, in a large organization, multi-cloud always used to exist because there were departments. Somebody is going with some X public cloud, so somebody is going using some Y public cloud, somebody using some Z public cloud. So this multi-cloud used to exist though in silos within the organization, but now it is going to exist more as a strategical needs. And so in the last couple of years there have been significant advances in the technology that is making the life of a technology person easier to manage the multi-cloud environment from a single dashboard. That is point number one. Point number two is that multi-cloud dashboard helps you to on the cost economies also, cost arbitrage also. Number three, now there are certain kind of business use cases, I would rather say, are available in a much optimized manner in a particular cloud operator, but may not be available in another cloud operator, or that service may be available as an off the shelf service with one cloud operator and may not be available with the other cloud operator. So that helps me to leverage the best of the cloud services among the cloud operators. Now, that is another thing. Now, next is that over a period of time, this we have started a lot of application development is having using containerization. Now, containerization on one hand helps in terms of the rapid deployment, but it also helps in terms of the rapid deployment across the multiple clouds. Now, last but not least, I would say is that um, it also helps me to avoid the vendor lock-ins. I mean, if I'm with a one X cloud, I'm stuck. Now, I mean, if I'm multi clouds, I can negotiate, I can bargain, and it helps me to avoid the lock in from the cloud from the cost perspective also. So I think Manoj, that's what my
Yeah,
take on some of these things.
fair point.
And we are multi cloud is the thing with and I think that is where we are.
Fair point. I think the last point was pretty important. Vendor concentration risk is something that we have been talking about day in and day out, and the multi-cloud adoption will most likely take care of that risk as well. From hypervisor to private cloud to public cloud, now we are talking about edge computing, taking the computing to the edge, where the data gets generated. And CapEx, OpEx, discussing for quite long. Although most organization will always have a CapEx component and a OpEx component of their budget allocation at all times. So we are yet to move to completely OpEx model, or completely to we do not operate completely on CapEx model, either of them. So let me hand it over to Dr. Ravindran. Between CapEx and OpEx. So how difficult is the choice, and how does an organization determine whether to go for CapEx or whether to go for OpEx, and what could be the right balance?
Thanks, Manoj. It's a highly relevant questions. Uh, in fact, let me put the answer for your second question, I think, which is the most preferred model. I rather advocate on the OpEx part. That's what actually we are practicing in our where I'm working in my group companies also. Comparing the CapEx versus OpEx, like you rightly indicated, it'll be highly challenging, especially for the CEOs when we project for some procurement. It can be any components for them. But for me, it depends upon, you may think a different odd also. It's a tech savvy level of the CEOs and the CFOs as a prime factor here actually, while selling the part of CapEx versus OpEx. And other factors are like feasibility, viability, necessity, etc. That's all secondary factors. But first thing is like though as CEO I have a perception like always we can go with like OpEx model, then I have to convince, like I already indicated, my CEO and CFO. Like one of my fellow panelists, he was mentioning, it is like how we do the accounting part, etc. But it matters. But fortunately, in my company, I think CEO and CFO are favorable to the OpEx model. Let me go a little bit deep and short also. So you take all the components, whether it is servers or applications, software components, networking, and front-end devices like laptops, even smartphones that matter. I think we have started putting that OpEx into place gradually. And earlier, of course, some years back, of course, we bought things upright. And even prior to COVID, we started introducing like own your laptop, even own your smartphone schemes, so that I think like we the staff can buy some of the like devices what they're using now, and we reimburse them in a gradual manner, I think, by putting in the salary. And just giving a small example. And you take even networking components. Earlier we used to buy upfront, whatever it may be, like a switch or this thing and all. Now the vendors are available, like they give it for OpEx. Now I'm not moving to cloud at all. I'm talking about first internal environment here actually. Even we went for a recent SD-WAN covering n number of branches. The devices we tied up with the vendor, with the principals and all. We worked out a proposition so that they just supplied us with the OpEx model. This is just small example. I'm not going deep into it. And when it comes to servers, like we stopped buying server even 5-6 years back. We are with cloud that point of time itself. Then automatically it's become like cloud enabled, and again it is OpEx model. And all the new applications, like whatever we are embracing for the past so many years, all with SaaS model, of course, in cloud. So this is the journey we are into. So the choice of difficulty in how to adopt CapEx versus OpEx, definitely it can be easily determined and convinced. I'll give one small example. Even one of the co-panelists is talking about, the core application. I think we are somewhat, we are compelled to retain our place due to some challenges and all. And now we have the necessity, due to some reasons, our core lending application in our non-banking finance company, we are on the verge of migrating, or we are in a compelled position to change it. So now we are seriously looking for cloud-based and OpEx model. So to sum up for your this thing and all, now I'm an evangelist of rather OpEx, and there are options available to convince the management to go for OpEx, and of course to convince the CEO, CFO also very easily. That's what.
Okay, I think that's a good overview and insight into the capex opex debate. And let me move quickly to Amit to understand his perspective on using capex versus opex in a bank like RBL Bank.
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. Dr. Ravindran has actually put it very pragmatically. It's about the choice that we make. Bank like ours started thinking about cloud long time back. Our first investment on the cloud was actually Oracle Fusion, the HRMS solution that we procured way back in five years ago, and that was a SaaS model, right? So, and slowly and steadily, we are seeing that more and more players are getting into the SaaS model, like Dr. Ravindran said. So, whether it is SFDC, right, which was never heard of in the banking industry, now more and more people are adopting SFDC, which is a cloud first kind of a technology. So we have those examples, and which banks are now adopting, and a mix of capex and opex is something which we go for in our bank, in our setup, because everything cannot be opex and everything cannot be capex. So you have to have a fine balance of capex and opex. But it all depends upon what is your need and how much you want to do it. So as I stated in my previous few minutes back, or few that for us, OpEx is always for a non-core application where we require to say that uptime is there, but it doesn't require to be a 24/7 application. We go for that kind of application moving to the cloud. We are already taking a leap into moving our lot of our applications on cloud, including our DR setup, because DR is something which you want to bring it up when you want it, right? In the current subscription model that are available in the market, if I talk about apple to apple comparison, you will see that the capex, the cost outgo of a cloud subscription will be 2.5x, close to 2.5x, and we don't actually add on to the other factors which are like the networking part, the AIML bit, and other past services that we consume. If we try to just use the hardware, right, so that will be 2.5x. Now, yes, there was a one point which Anand also raised some time back, which was about using the reserved instance, wherein we can bring the cost down to say 1.5x or 1.4x, but then still it's a cost outgo for all of us. So we need to be a little more pragmatic in terms of choosing what to move to cloud and what not to move to cloud. Yeah, but overall I would suggest that a fine balance is more important of capex and opex expenditure, and which I suppose a CFO or a CEO would like to go for it, and rather than just a complete capex expenditure. From a cloud perspective, yes, whether we go for a reserved instance or or for a subscription based model, it's all opex, because it's 1 year you need to just consume it, right? And next year again a new bill will come, even if you are going for reserved instance. So it's all opex in nature, and it's then an organization has to take a call. So that's what I can sum it up as far as the capex and opex is concerned.
I think that's a good summary, and cost is one thing that will primarily drive cloud adoption from the discussion that we had. And there's an anonymous agreement that cost is one of the major factors. Moving gears, uh, in the cloud environment, security still remains a major concern. Because of the multi-tenant environment, there is a possibility that data of one tenant may be available to other. There may be breaches, there may be compromises, and while the cloud service provider will provide you, the environment and ensure the availability, that's a SLA based. there's no SLA that is practically available for the security parameters. So what are the security concerns security concerns that need to be addressed when you go for a cloud procurement? Let me pose this question to Rishikant.
Yeah, thank you, Manoj. Actually, when cloud comes into the picture, if we remember, it was told that it is a very secure environment because there is a because cloud always come with the security. But when adoption is started, then we really find out that yes, our data is with some other vendor or it is hosted on some other platform. So there is a then we find out that a lot of securities issue is there in the cloud itself. One first one, if we talk about, is a data loss. That is the major because our whole data, everything is on a cloud, and if anything happen on a loss of data, and it's a very much vulnerable in many times if the really the all the security features are not provided with the cloud. So data loss is the one of the security threat that is there. Other one is that if you are talking about that interference of the hackers, because a lot of hackers are there, then if APIs and other things are not working properly, then it is very much vulnerable that that my data may be hacked or my accounts may be hacked. And user account hijacking is also there in the clouds. A lot of instances are there. That is one of the risks. And other risk, if we are talking, is the very prominent and nominal, is that changing service provider. That is again a very huge risk, because if we are changing from AWS to any other cloud, migration and taking the data from there and hosting to the other is going to be another risk. It's a very huge risk we are running. And then one more is that to manage all these risks, if we see a lot of risks are coming, and then skill set is the major issue, because understanding of the cloud, how it functions, how to secure my data, how to provide all the things, skill set should be there with my organization also when we are going for the adopting the cloud. So that is one major risk we are running in the really in the cloud environment. And one more thing is that which comes in my mind is the denial of the services. One more risk that that many a times it comes also, and if any attack is coming, then if this type of risk is coming in BFSI, especially in the banks and all, then it's going to be a real disaster. So these risks needs to be managed properly, and these are the major risk, security type of risk we are seeing in the cloud. Yeah, Manoj.
Okay, I think that's a good summarization of the risks that are in cloud. But if you are hosting also your infrastructure on premises, there is a certain amount of risk also that remains. And my next question, that risk profile changes, when you move your applications from on-premise to cloud. So what are the different implications, do you think, risk implication or the security implication that are there when you move from on-premise to cloud?
Manoj, this question to me?
Dr. Ravindran.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Manoj. Like I think my co-panelist Dubey indicated, like I'm talking about some years back when we are recommending to migrate something from on-premise to cloud. The first question came in, I think nicely narrated, Dubey nicely narrated, how secure is our data? And again, unfortunately, we are into the financial service segment, and data value, and and we have to protect the data, and all were the prime concerns. But how I can answer is like in my views, how that can be handled while migrating is first big thing is selection of a good data center. We call it as a tier one or proven or established. That is the first point I want to say, so that the risk of that particular thing can be mitigated even the basic level itself is a primary point I want to convey. And second thing is like the basic security features available. I think when we want to host an instance over there, I think it can be a bare metal part or whatever it may be. You have to understand that very clearly. Then what really you need to ensure, as per your requirements, like the data can be secured, the application can be secured. That is very, very important. For example, no, I'll give a firewall. Uh, any established data center, no, they'll give a basic firewall part, but you have to go deep into it and understand like whether that firewall is okay or not. Sometimes it may be okay for some users to access in generic through as a web application, something and all. Suppose our branches they want to access with a VPN connectivity over there, then that firewall may not be sufficient. So, what is the point I want to drive here is no the basic features available with the data center and what we require, and even you can take some consultancy approach on this to ensure it is perfectly okay. Because this is very, very important now while you migrate your application or you freshly put an application in cloud. And another important thing is like the proper monitoring, like no any attacks. It can be normal virus attack or denial of service or any sort of thing and all. The scenario is very vulnerable nowadays. So again, some data centers they have their own monitoring tools and alerts. I think even proactive alerts. Now we are talking about even AI based alerts we are talking about now. So you see the possibility of like embedding that in your environment, uh, after understanding what are the basic things they have and what you require more, so that no I think your data and application is safe. This is a proper monitoring tools and arrangement. I know there are a lot of dashboards available with data center. You can monitor lively and you can get alerts, etc. And the patches part, whether it is your application or the database part or the OS part, whether it's all being applied, that also you have to take care. So it is not like we just take here and put it in the cloud. It's not like that. These measures, we have to really take care, to see that your application, whether it is a migrated one or a new one installed over there, it be very, very important. One more thing, again, one of my panelists he mentioned about the data security, because though they claim I think they have a replica maintained at another zone, and there is a cloning happen between one thing to another place instead of backup, etc. You have to be very clear into it whether that's happening as per the norms. It is not like for the sales pitch over there. So that that's why again I'm repeating, a good data center normally they ensure this. But if you go to sometimes due to some reasons you don't want to put all the eggs in the same basket, sometimes you go with some other data center due to cost and other factors. There I think you have to be very, very careful. The last point I want to address for all that applications you migrated thing and all, you do the penetration testing. Even I suggest even it can be monthly once, nothing wrong. You can engage an agency for that, do the penetration testing, so that our agility of that environment is, because now and then you change the code over there, uh, whatever it may be. So if you do the penetration test periodically, so that I think you are ensured of your instance against the vulnerabilities over cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there are 4 or 5 very important points that you have brought in. One is do the due diligence and make sure that the data center, that service provider that you are selecting is credible enough. Do design your application well so that it has no inherent weakness. Monitor them. Make sure that your monitoring is robust, and then periodically test that application with penetration or vulnerability scanning, so that you uncover if there are any vulnerability that is creeping in into your application or the whole setup. So I think that's quite a summarization of what you have just mentioned. I think those are fair points. uh, Moving to the last part, I would like each of the panelists to take 2 minutes to summarize uh, you know, as we have anonymously, agreed that cloud adoption is something that is going to increase, and cloud adoption is the way to go. Let's understand from each of you, and what will be the appropriate migration strategy to move your workload to the cloud with a minimal risk. So let me start from Anand.
Okay. Thanks, Manoj. I think it's one of the very important topic which we all keep debating among all of us. So I think the first and foremost is planning, planning, and planning. I mean, without adequate planning, no matter which best of the cloud operator, it will not work it out. That's the first and foremost thing. Second thing is that go with that managed service provider or system integrator who has an experience of doing cloud migration for the industry in which you are, for similar type of industries. Extremely important point. Now, after having done these two things, so while with if these two things are taken care of, migration should not be a big challenge. But from preparing a migration strategy perspective, once these basics are set, first look into migrating the in-house applications where there is no customer impact, there is no business impact. So start looking at migrating those applications first. So prepare a list of applications in the order of ascending order of business impact, and keep migrating based on that strategy. Keep testing that each and every application in terms of by having a proper test strategy. So the application which is having a highest business impact and application which will take highest lead time to migrate should be considered in the last. I think I would just make these couple of points.
I think three very important points. One is plan. Go with a service provider who has experience. Then start with internal application and preferably ascending order of business impact. I think that's summarized pretty well. Let me move to Amit Goel with the same question. What will be your strategy for migration into the cloud with minimal risk?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. So we have a little different strategy. What we did was something which is new, which we were not having it in our system. We first tried to use that and move that on straight away, use it on cloud. So data warehouse is one such example, right, where we actually set up our data warehouse on the cloud itself, and which was something which is new, and we didn't wanted to invest in, and we wanted to use the Azure and the AWS's capability on data warehouse. So we started with that and slowly started adding lots of application onto that. As we speak, we are also trying to figure out if we can move some of our critical applications onto the cloud on a production instance, the primary instance part. The second strategy that we started, which we recently started, was also moving, setting up our DR onto the cloud itself. So all my core applications, the critical applications, few which we cannot move, like my core banking system is still in our secondary data center, which is the DR side. But other applications which we can move it to cloud, we have migrated to cloud and tested, and these are our most critical applications. When I say critical, these are like platinum application for us. The categorization of these applications is platinum, and all of them have successfully gotten migrated to cloud. So it is now giving us a confidence that movement to cloud is possible, and we can move most of the application on cloud. Yes, it requires a lot of planning. It requires a lot of components to be lifted and shifted, right? It can be from a middleware layer to servers to all those things. All the components has to be there migrated correctly, and once they are done correctly, then it is immaterial whether it is a platinum application or a gold or a silver application for us to move to cloud. But the whole idea has to be that try test it out, and once you have tested for a couple of applications, you will get confidence of moving the other application also on cloud. So for us, I suppose data warehouse was one of the starting point for us, which figured out that we can do it. So then we started moving other application on cloud. So that's what from my side. Closing comments.
Okay, thanks, Amit. Let me move to Rishikant to the same question. What will be appropriate migration strategy to move workloads? So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, Manoj, thank you. Actually, when we are talking about migrating to cloud, then what Anand has mentioned, planning is the foremost. Planning in the sense it is not only planning how to move, but one thing is that planning which are the application which require to be moved. Because and one more thing, a very important link is that we need to have a talent with ourselves also when we are moving all the things to the cloud or whatever application. So we should have our internal team in place. That is the biggest risk management what I am looking, that can manage the cloud. Because when the things are moving into the cloud, we need to be very careful on the security part, we need to be very careful on the usage part, we need to be very careful on the optimization part, and how to test all of this. And Mr. Ravindran has correctly told, penetration test is very important on continuous basis. So for that we need to have a very good either consultant side, or we need to have a very good team with us. That is most important thing to manage my complete risk. If we are having that particular thing, yes, we can plan better. Which application will be migrated first, which application will be migrated second, it's a really management call, and it's really on the basis of the importance of the application. So that can be very well managed, but most important is that you should have a very good team and manage the risk of the complete migration. That is I want to put into the table. Thank you.
Okay, let me move to Dr. Ravindran on his take on the migration strategy that need to be adopted by enterprises.
Uh, yes, Manoj, there is actually, we can take a two-dimensional strategy here. Like, I think Anand also mentioned, Amit very clearly touched upon. One is like whenever you go for any new applications, new instances, uh, don't put non-prem at all. You take it only in cloud. That's very clear. Second, a very important challenge what we face, like existing on-prem, uh, I think servers, applications, etc. There, you can engage some consultants. I think again Anand touched upon that, because it's a very very critical move for us, and it's all live running over there. It is fine, but sometimes you may get the necessity, like the server may be touching its out of life, and operating system what you are running is again problem. You may not put patches very clearly over there, because sometimes we tend to run for some years because it's running okay. In fact, we have a blade server, we are 1 or 2 years, even we crossed its life actually. So there, like what you can do now, you can follow, I think you all might aware, there is a 6R strategy there. I think this normally it's a very easily understandable one. I think whether you have to rehost it, or whether you have to re-platform it, or whether refactor or re-architect it, or repurchase, and very last thing is important now, retire and retain. Either some of the things, servers you can even discontinue. For example, one of our sister concern, because I'm the CEO, we have a dairy setup. There were about 10 tally servers running in different locations on prem. We took a call, and we nicely consolidated it, but very huge success for, there is no manual like synchronization, etc. It's very planned and done. It's a matter of 1 week, uh, including it's just tally, actually it's a tally instance, 10 servers we consolidated, matter of 1 week. So this 6R strategy, and getting an expertise outside, whether you are in the right direction. And one more important thing is, most of the data centers they allow you a period to do the POC. Even you can have trial run. Even you take like ERPs, SAP, etc. Some data centers they allow you to test it over there, put it and try it out. So you can do a very careful, cautious, gradual approach as far as moving the existing applications over cloud. Then there'll not be any hiccups, and even users they'll not feel whether they are working in the on-prem servers or in the cloud over there. I think these are my these things. So,
Right. I
such
think to summarize, two broad strategies that are coming out. One is when you are moving to cloud, look at non-critical application in the reverse order of business impact and move them to cloud. The second is new application you start hosting in the cloud and then move gradually other application onto the cloud.
correct.
And then use of cloud as a DR strategy, use of cloud as to have redundancy. Then another thing that is coming out clearly is build a team which can manage your cloud infrastructure pretty well. So that's talent is something that is very important. And another thing that is coming out pretty well is move gradually and make sure that your workload is performing. Then you move your next application. So do not move it suddenly. So these are some of the I think key points that are coming out from our discussion in this panel. And I think cloud adoption is going to grow, and different strategies will mature over time. Risk managing risk, managing talent, and managing migration to cloud, gradual migration to cloud will remain very important for cloud strategy of any organization. With this, I would like to thank all my co-panelists for the wonderful session and insightful discussion that we had. And with that, we'll conclude this session. Thank you, everyone, for your
Thank you.
contribution.
Thank you.
Thank, thank you for such a great panel discussion. Now, as a token of appreciation, I would like to present an appreciation certificate. Thank you, Manoj Sarangi, Chief Information Security Officer, NSDL Bank. Thank you, Mr. Anand Agarwal, Chief Information Officer, Acre India. Thank you, Mr. Amit Goyal, Head IT Risk Compliance, RBL Bank. Thank you, Mr. Rishikant Dubey, Chief Risk Officer, Bluetooth Microphone Limited. Thank you, Mr. Dr. N. Ravindran, Chief Information Officer, Shakti Finance. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and sharing your valuable views.